Welcome to a discussion about music and philosophy. We're your hosts. I'm Justin Haas. This is Stevie D. And this is Sound Mind.
How's it going, man?
Pretty good.
Pretty good.
It's been a week.
Been a week.
A whole week since we've seen each other. I have been busy at work like a normal person. And
But you are not a normal person.
hopefully not. So last night when you texted me, hey, are we good for tomorrow? I was like, of course. The thing that I knew and remembered about and definitely did prep for happening tomorrow. Of course. Yes.
You're a bad liar.
Yeah, I know. For sure. So one thing that happened that was not expected, I mean, work is expected. It's scheduled, right? So you expect it. One thing that happened that was not expected was a friend of mine got into a car accident. And, it was pretty gnarly. And he's writing some music, I guess, that kind of came out of the emotions, kind of processing what happened. And it's really beautiful. And I find that interesting. It's just this idea that you can take something horrific and intense and, not fun and turn it into something that is subtle and, not intense in a traditional way. He didn't turn around and write a metal track. He turned around and wrote a piano instrumental. So that's really interesting.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So what have you been up to?
Well, good question. Busy. Very busy. Let's see, I had several recording sessions last week. Getting ready for Christmas.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. By the time these come out, we'll be past Christmas.
Yeah.
And forgetting all the trauma.
That comes from
Yeah.
the busyness.
The busyness. It never ceases to amaze me. This year, particularly, I was thinking about the holidays and everything and how when we communicate and we talk about it, family time, we get vacations, all this stuff. But it never ceases to amaze me that the time around the holidays that is supposed to be spent focused on your family and relaxing and, deepening relationship is stressing out and worrying about all these other things.
Yeah.
Who's got what gift under the tree and not wanting to shop with a million people in line, snow and ice if you're in Washington State or the Northwest or close to any kind of mountain.
Yeah.
Driving in that, wrapping the presents.
Yeah.
Yeah, so anyway, I was doing a lot of thinking about that and just realizing really not a whole lot of time goes into the intentional aspect of it in our lives as a family, and that's not a good thing. It's definitely something I want to change, but I don't know how.
I think that's a recurring element, though, of the holidays in general. It's just everybody's so, caught up in the, we got to do this, and we got to get that, and we got to prep for this and that and the other thing, and, because it's all wrapped up. You got Thanksgiving, which is a ton of food prep if you're, a normal American that wants to just chow down, right? So you put a ton of work into this one day of just gorging yourself that then turns into a week of leftovers or so if you're spacing it out. But if you're a normal person, you probably eat it all in 2 days. But
normal American.
Normal American.
Keyword
yes.
American.
American. Yeah, so that's definitely part of it. And then you just roll right into Christmas time. You got just a little bit of time from there. At least it feels just like a little bit of time to get all these presents for all of the people that you know. And you're like, am I forgetting somebody? And you probably are. And you probably didn't get them a present. And you're a bad person because you forgot about your friend. And now they're going to hate you forever because you didn't get them a present, you jerk. So, it's a pretty stressful time, honestly.
Yeah. Well, it's good to process. That's been a big piece of my week, just the busyness, but also my wife wanting to do shopping. I still have shopping to do. fitting everything else in with all that and going, why am I doing all this again? What's important? How is this supposed to feel? So
Yeah.
Not feeling like I've had a whole lot of time for anybody or myself to kind of get set and ground myself.
Same.
So here we are doing it together, live to you from Skytree Studios at Zion, Spokane.
That's Spokane, Washington. I don't know if there's another Spokane.
Spokane, Washington, because, you probably know of Seattle.
Yeah.
But not Spokane.
Seattle exists.
And we are not close to each other.
No.
Seattle is on the other side of the state.
Yeah.
Sort of.
What is it, like 300 miles? Something like that?
Yeah.
Maybe not quite, but...
Yeah. 275-ish.
Yeah.
So, should I present this huge idea that we are going to dive into?
Well, we've got to do it at some point, so no time like the present, I guess.
So, the topic is going to be, where does artistic expression come from?
Right.
Where does art come from? Where does music come from? And why do we do it? And what does it do for us and for people that hear it? So
this is a great question.
It's humongoid of a question.
Yep.
So obviously we're not going to be able to dissect it entirely in one session. So we will come back, and as we're having artists and different people come in that we're going to interview, we'll bring them alongside, get their perspective, and hit this thing from many different angles.
Oh, yes, every angle imaginable.
Every angle. And then when we do our 72-hour marathon...
Right, that we're definitely doing.
That you're going to want to tune in for.
Yeah, that's definitely
because
happening.
You will win the prize.
The prize of watching it.
And seeing us. Perfect. So... it's going to be fun. I'm excited to really break it down.
Yeah. So I think a great place to start would be kind of exploring our, maybe our introductions into artistic expression, our personal way that we kind of turned to it, I guess.
Yeah.
Because everybody kind of gets their foot wet a little bit. They're like, what's going on? What's going on, Water?
Water's too cold.
This water's way too cold. Gonna go
Cannonball.
over here. Yeah. Some people cannonball it, So me asking you, how, why, when, where?
Yeah.
I know who you are, so who isn't really relevant, but
okay. So looking back at my life, I can see it starting really early. Mm-hmm. When it started, I was too young to notice or even realize, what I was doing. I really think for me, not just for me, for humans. Let me just say that. I've never seen a baby or a toddler that doesn't dance and doesn't sing. I've never seen it.
That's an interesting observation. Yeah.
I've never seen it. So I'm just going to assume that we all are born singing and dancing, which is food for thought.
That is food for thought.
When do we quit and why? Different time, different place. So I will lump myself in the category of everyone and say I probably wasn't any different than any other toddler. I sang and I danced. I remember two of my favorite movies were Grease and La Bamba. And I'm talking like 3 or 4 years old. And you might be wondering, who and what kind of parents would let a 3 or 4-year-old watch those movies? Even though Grease has got a PG rating, man, there's some stuff in that you got to unpack.
Well, it was a different time.
It was a different time.
PG rating was a little more loose.
Yeah, which is crazy, though. You think anyway, that's a side thought, but there's PG-13 movies now that are like, what? That's way loose.
Yeah.
So,
that's
anyway.
A little too loose for me.
Loved music. My dad bought me an acoustic guitar, little, toy one, and I would play and sing La Bamba songs, all of them, and the Grease ones, but I didn't know how to play any chords, so I'm just strumming and singing these songs. Also writing very early age when I started to read in school. In my school, so I'm talking first grade, we had a chunk of the morning dedicated to writing a little, journal entry.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I love that time. Our teacher would give us like a topic. If you had a rocket ship and you were going to travel into space, you had $1 million. All these kind of conversations, topics, and I would go off, and I didn't think anything about it until later when I found a box that my mom had kept of all the old things and looked in it and started reading and realizing, wow, that's great stuff. I don't remember anybody saying how great it was, but it was eye-opening to me going back and reading and discovering, hey, I wrote this when I was a kid. If I encountered a kid and read this, I would want to point that out. Mm-hmm. There was an obvious, love for writing and gift even. Mm-hmm. So I was about...
Hashtag humble brag.
Right? Come on now. Yeah, I'm just saying the truth.
Speaking
the truth. So it wasn't until I was about 9 before I realized that writing was doing something for me. I can't remember if I shared this before on the show, but my dad, he got locked up in prison when I was 8 years old. And we moved from Reno, Nevada to Washington State when I was 9. And also, my grandma passed away that same year after we moved. So Dad goes to prison, I moved from the only place I'd ever known, and then grandma passed away. Devastating couple of years. So can't remember why I started or what triggered it, but I did. I began writing poetry. And I would write these poems, I would type them out, and share them with my mom and, close family, close friends. And I remember a lot of the adults saying, it does not sound like a kid wrote this. And, I didn't realize how much it was helping me or even why I was doing it. So yeah, that was kind of the beginning of seeing writing, be a tool for me to process my life and what I was going through in the eyes of other stories that weren't directly connected with me. It's a lot safer to tell a story about something, a person, or, that's not you specifically.
Yeah.
I think writers do it all the time in their books, writing scenarios and different stories that correspond with their life and help them process, but they're not saying, this is me, this is what I'm dealing with, this is how I feel. But they are at the same time.
Yeah, yeah.
So I love art and I love music for those reasons. I got into hip-hop. I listened to a lot of hip-hop starting probably around 11 years old and started writing and playing around with rapping myself around the age of 15. Mm-hmm. And another outlet, 15's an interesting age. You're in high school. For me, I swore that I didn't care what anybody thought, but I spent a lot of energy thinking about what everybody thought. So my writing wasn't as deep or creative in the aspect of content.
Sure.
Presentation, creative presentation, phrasing, those things. I was a fan of several, hip hop artists and explored the presentation of it, but not the deep lyrical content. So I ended up asking, I was at a party one night back in the day when I used to get down like every night. It was bad. I was at a party and this guy from a pretty successful hip-hop group in Seattle, they hadn't hit the mainstream, but they were big in the Northwest. I asked him at the party, I said, hey, let me spit this for you. I need to know if I'm good or if I should quit doing this. And I remember being really anxious about the idea. Anyway, I spit this rhyme to him at this party, and he's like, you got some skills, don't quit. And that kind of sent me going. I do remember when I would rap or freestyle, I felt life when I did it. I didn't even know what that meant, but just felt like when I was in those moments, there was something about life that seemed more vibrant, more genuine. I was connected with more of my senses when I would do it. And so that's kind of where it started. I could go off forever, but I'll give you the short.
The short and narrow.
I'll give you the short and narrow from that point to now.
Okay.
Several trips to county jails, several treatment centers, several relocations.
You got hoard.
It was bad. It was bad. And writing and art were pieces of those seasons sometimes, and sometimes they weren't. I ended up here in Spokane when I was 20 because of drug and alcohol treatment center. So I came here.
You
Naughty. Came here to actually get my feet on the ground. And so I was in treatment. I had been in county jail in Kittitas County for 2.5 months prior. So I did 2.5 months in county, and then I came here to do 90 days inpatient. And I had already decided, like, I wasn't going back. Now I got to figure out how am I going to live my life and not use drugs, sell drugs, just be around negative influences that were going to, continue giving me the same results that I had been getting.
Right.
So I was here, and I found out that they had a digital audio production program at Spokane Falls. And that was kind of like a key for me to stay here. So I started looking for housing, decided I don't want to go back to where I was. I was living in Cle Elum, Washington. All my old friends and people were there. And so got enrolled and got accepted, got in, got the grant, and so went there. And so I come with all this history and baggage and stuff that I'd went through on top of this love for writing and, music and stuff. And then come and I'm bringing it to school, and now I'm going to learn some technical things. And so I went through a music theory class. I knew nothing about music as far as instrumentation goes, theory, rhythm, melody, any of it. And so I'm going through music theory, and there's all these musicians in my class that play by ear. None of them read music, and they're bringing their instrument and their experience and trying to put some theory to it, right? And here I am getting theory fed to me, and I don't play jack. So I had to start like locking myself into the piano rooms, just to figure out what the heck the teacher was talking about. On top of that, my teacher had a PhD in music theory, and he's the only guy, like, at that time, west of the Mississippi River, that had a PhD in music theory.
Dang.
And he's teaching us, it's like if a mathematician teaching you math, you know how they are, right? Like, that's the most important thing ever to the person who's presenting it.
Yeah.
And I have those areas. And so it's just excruciating. So I'm in the piano room, figuring out chords and inversions and all this. And
how fun.
And that was the next journey of my experience writing. And so just to kind of summarize and wrap up, in that time, that was 2005. So here we are, when I graduated, 2005. Here we are, 2018, almost 2019. And now I'm producing. I write my own stuff. I write even when no one hears it as a source to process my life, like I discovered when I was 9, or was doing when I was 9, but didn't discover it till later. Still a huge part of my life. And that when we talk about where does music come from and why we do it, one of my huge whys is processing my life, getting stuff out that might be trapped in, things like that. And so, yeah, that's a short version. I've recorded, produced, and written a few different mixtapes and engineered and produced probably close to 15, 20 other projects. Maybe more than that, probably more than that. So anyway, that's a brief background that didn't feel as brief as I thought it would be when I started.
Right. That's good stuff. So, in regards to, our starting premise, I guess, which is that art exists as this thing that is, well, maybe I should have asked if it was your starting premise. It's my starting premise, which is that art is this thing that we don't even know what it is, but it's trying to get out, right? And so we find outlets for it. We seek them out, whether that's through painting or or poetry, right? So would you say that you at a young age you were doing it without really knowing what it was? Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think I just started tapping into what it was maybe when I was like 25. I don't think I really knew what it was. Maybe 20. Started to just graze the surface.
Yeah, so that's pretty interesting because that pretty closely mirrors my experience. We went a little bit, we diverged.
That's a good thing.
At a road.
I hope.
Yeah, I would say I started writing. I started writing poetry when I don't know, around puberty. Get your
he was trying to pick up a girl.
Something like that. I don't know. I think you just get this chemical dump, this hormone dump / hair's growing in places where it wasn't before.
Right.
You have this nihilistic thing where you realize that you're going to die someday. And it's just like this crazy combo of like, you are going down, son. Like,
just figure out what you're going to do about it.
Yeah. So I was an emotional wreck, partly due to all of the above things. A nihilistic thing where I was like, oh, I'm going to die someday. Life is horrible. And yeah, so I started writing poetry. I would say when I was a kid, the two biggest art forms that I cared about were film and music. My first band that I really got into, which I think I mentioned previously, but it was a 70s progressive rock band called Kansas. And that was probably my musical awakening, right?
Wow.
Right? So that was when I started listening to music in a intentional way and not a passive way. Like, listening to music then was so much more intentional than even now when I listen to music, because I wouldn't be doing anything. I would put my music in, I would sit down in a chair or lay down on my bed and just listen to albums or whatever. So there's whole Kansas albums where I don't know the names of any of the songs, but if I was listening to the song, I could tell you what the next measures would sound like because I've heard those albums hundreds of times. And then from there, it was a short hop and skip to metal. For some reason, I'm not really sure what that reason is. I think it's because there's a pretty high emphasis on, I got started in 80s speed metal, and there's a high emphasis on technicality, really hitting those notes, doing the unexpected thing. So Megadeth, obviously, first metal band I got into. I would say my metal awakening was in the song "Wake Up Dead," I think, on, I believe it's Peace Cells. There's this middle section that just gets nuts. It's just like fast, it's crazy, and then it drops into the last section, which I think is the first part with vocals. Or at least maybe it's a sandwich, like vocal beginning, instrumental, vocal ending, something like that. Anyway, that musical ending bit, it's like bum, 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 ba da 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 bum, 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 and it's just so weird and like off, and it was like, what's that about? So I started exploring metal and got into a ton of metal bands. It was a short hop and a skip away to hardcore, post-hardcore. So basically, I started listening to all this really off-putting music, not very mainstream at all. Very embracing the odd weirdness of it. And to me, that was the prerequisite for listening, is that it had to be weird. It had to be off-putting, at least in one sense. Not that I thought about it in those terms, but really that's what it was. I started listening to more mainstream music, like My Chemical Romance and stuff like that. And I eventually ended up in the pop realm, which I enjoyed more than I thought I would. Yeah. So that's kind of my, I don't know, my realm, I guess, is more music than anything else. But I've been writing songs for a long time. My first batch, so like a 5-year batch of songwriting is all terrible. It's just the worst. But I have songs that I wrote when I was, like 16, 17 that I'm going to be recording with you in a little bit.
Can't wait.
And I've been working on these songs, obviously, for more years than I really want to say out loud. And they've transformed from this thing that was like passable into something that was that I think is genuinely interesting.
Yeah.
And so that's been a cool progression, is because I've been returning to it over time.
Yeah, and just real quick,
Yeah.
remember where you're going, because I just felt the need to say this. For any young writers out there or young musicians, make sure when you write something that you let somebody listen to it before you conclude whether it's good or bad.
Yeah.
Which I know Justin, and I know that he did that. Don't just assume it's bad. I don't know how many times I've had artists or writers throw something away or disregard it without showing anybody, and come to find out there's some great pieces of it. The whole thing is great. I mean, I've pulled stuff out of trash cans and ended up producing songs out of it.
Yeah, totally. And part of it too is sometimes people will tell you it's not good, but they can't really tell you what about it they don't like or what about it. So look at it really, not from a technical perspective. That's not really what I mean. Maybe it's more of an objective. Put it away and come back to it. Give it some time, because the flaws will be more obvious when you return to it, when it's a little bit more foreign, when you don't remember it anymore. That's when you'll be like, oh, like this lyric is actually terrible. Like this lyric that I thought was good is not good. Or maybe what this needs is, maybe the lead is a little too busy. Something like that. You return to it and you notice those things easier.
And sometimes you return to it and the thing you thought was horrible, you like.
Right, it's fine.
Both things happen.
Exactly. And so I would say that too. I mean, but don't be, when you share it, it takes a lot of guts to be able to be like, this is my teenage angsty, like, weirdness.
Right.
Please tear it apart and tell me what about it sucks. And that's hard to do. But when you do it, don't be a jerk about it. Because often what happens is you show it to someone, you work up the courage, show it to someone, they give you their honest perspective, and you're like, well, your opinion doesn't matter anyways. You don't even know anything about anything, bro.
And especially, you don't know anything about me.
I am the king of my own life, and I do whatever. Yeah. I do what I want. Yeah, so this is a pretty common thing, I think. And the reality of it is most people don't know anything about music theory. Most people don't know how to write music, or if they do know how to write music, it's something that they do by copying what they've heard already. They don't have a method per se. They just know what the end result needs to sound like, and so they just copy that kind of route, right?
Right.
Which is fine, but so what they're telling you is their perspective as a listener, not as a writer. So they're telling you how the experience comes across, post, not knowing anything about the writing process or anything. So their perspective is going to be the average perspective, right? So if you're expecting to share your product, right, your song with the world, that's going to be the person that's going to either enjoy it or not enjoy it. So their perspective is probably the most honest that you'll hear, that type of person.
Right.
So don't necessarily seek out your friends that know exactly where you're coming from and then go, here, what do you think? That feedback is good too, because, I have a lot of friends that write music and I share my stuff with them, but they tell me different things, right? That's a different perspective. And it's just as valuable, but identifying what it is that you're trying to get from the feedback is helpful too.
Yeah, and then who do you ask for that type of feedback?
Yeah.
You might want writing feedback. You need to talk to someone who's a good writer.
Yeah.
You want, solo feedback.
Yeah.
How was my solo lead line? You want to talk to someone who kills it.
Yeah, exactly. And this is an important thing too. Like, I think lyrics, like a good lyric, should be a good standalone poem. And it should only add to what is good about the song musically. So, and that's hard, and I recognize that. A good music can lift a horrible poem to like godlike status. But if the poem, i.e. lyric, is godlike status already, then it's only going to add more weight and meat and just beautiful juiciness to the music, right? So I put a lot of pressure on myself to write good lyrics. I do not often, but I do. And maybe that's a personal thing too, because I'm not a huge fan of my lyrics, but I do put a lot of pressure on myself to go through at least 2 drafts. Keep your first draft, I would say. I would suggest that to everyone. Keep your first draft, but definitely do a second draft almost every time.
Yeah.
At least 2.
Oh, yeah.
Because your first draft is just what's on the tip of your brain, You're just like, I'm just going to, and then you just kind of throw it up. Your second draft is you're reaching a little bit more. You're building upon what you've already done. So definitely do at least 2. I generally do 3. It depends on how many years I've been working on the thing, because I sometimes go real deep.
I'm with you. I'm at least 3, at least the very minimum, and oftentimes like 4 or 5, and then sometimes more than I care to admit.
And don't get too attached to a single part, Just because it doesn't work where it is doesn't mean you can't put it somewhere else.
Right.
You can write a whole song based off of a part that you move. I've done that where there was like a bridge that just didn't fit, and I turned it into a chorus, and it makes more sense. It sounds better as its own song, instead of trying to force something that you like into something else.
Right. Put it on the shelf. Go a different direction with what you've got.
Right.
Look at that piece later.
Yeah.
Again, like you said, stepping away, coming back.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember, I still do this, but in the beginning, writing all kinds of things and having them all over the place. And sometimes what ended up on one sheet of paper turned into 4 or 5 different songs.
Yeah, exactly.
They were like ideas, Again, like processing your life. The first page is like if somebody made you mad or you were stressed out and you vomited on them, theoretically, you're just trash. Why you do this and why that? Yeah. When you've had enough, right? Let the first draft be like puke on the paper, that initial. And then hopefully you don't do that to people in your life. You do it on the paper. Yeah. And then you break it down more. So it's, again, you get to process life as well as write and create art, which I think is another point to point out. Creating. It's more than just art. But it's not more than just art. Art is more than what we think.
Yeah.
The creative process, I believe cooks are artists. Anything that you do with a creative mindset, engineering, welding, the creative, like you said, when we're looking for a way to let it out, all of us are, and finding those places. But so when we talk about art, I don't want to just, think of it as like video, music, books, painting. It's so much more than that.
Yeah, and that's a whole debate in and of itself that we probably shouldn't get into right now. But what qualifies as being art? Many a friendship has been put into jeopardy by my perspective on that.
Wow.
So I'm going to table that for now.
Table it for now.
And
when we come back to that topic, we may or may not have a podcast the following week.
Yeah. It gets pretty intense. Yeah, so I think that, all of that relates to the question of where art comes from, because what we have in common is what we were writing was out of a sense of, we were experiencing very different things. We come from very different backgrounds, but we ended up in a similar place creatively, I think, because we both ended up acknowledging what it was that art was doing for us, right, at some point, and embracing that. I think at the end of the day, for everyone that participates in creating art, it is an outlet, because you can't create something genuine that you have not experienced, right?
Correct.
You can copy, but it doesn't come across the same way. There's a genuineness that comes from having experienced something and then creating something as a dialogue of that. And it's you don't always know that's what it is, but that's what it is, right? There's something off-putting about a copy, and we talked about that last time. There's something off-putting about a copy, and you're like, it doesn't quite land, and I think that's why, is because it's just not genuine to the person.
Yeah, so it's a way of processing life, discovering yourself, letting other people discover you.
Yeah.
Whether they know they are or not.
And that's why it's so vulnerable.
Oh, it's so vulnerable.
Because like this is the inner part. This is the part that you're peeling back to show people
all the stuff that really matters to me.
And not even necessarily to show people, but you're just peeling it back to air it out, maybe. Just to get it out there.
Yeah.
People have different motivations, and I knew this guy that he was like the guy that like learns guitar to get the chicks?
Yeah.
This was that guy. But he took it to like an extreme. Like he was recording his own music and all this stuff. He was going on tour and it was just all terrible. It was all terrible. It landed really well because, everybody was like, oh, he's so cool, like blah, blah, blah. But it just wasn't anything beyond surface level.
Right.
And so he never really took off as far as I understand. But it's just really like, it's really gross. Like,
Yeah, it's a good point to talk about, backing up a little bit, what you said right before that. Music as a way, or art, creativity for that matter, as a way to get things out. What happens? I remember one of our conversations about metal. You were trying to describe your music to me.
Yeah.
You remember that? That's all right if you don't. But one of the things that you used to describe it was, you're like, well, think of a wound that's festering.
Yeah.
And it needs the pus to be released.
Yeah.
Ugh, right?
Yeah.
We are the release.
Yeah. It's that feeling.
Yeah.
I love that feeling of just like, this is gonna hurt, but this is gonna be better for me in the long run because it's got to come out.
Right.
Right.
Have you ever had like a killer toothache or something that you had to deal with, and
It's got to go.
it hurts,
gotta go bye-bye.
but you're glad that it's happening.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's so good.
A great band that does that. I'm just gonna give them a little shout out. Actually, I'm gonna do 2 shout outs. The other one I'm gonna do because I don't know if I'll remember later. The first shout out, Every Time I Die. So good. So freaking good. Their lyrics are amazing. They belt out some crazy deep stuff. Super good. They will melt your face off. Every Time I Die. Awesome. The particularly their newest album, Low Teens. So good. Second shout out, the YouTube channel Music is Win is a great way to learn theory. I've been watching that channel myself. Not the best with theory. I acknowledge this. And it's really helpful. He explains everything in a... It's not super flashy, but at the same time, it's super easy to follow. Like, it's just... You just watch it. Okay, that's what it is. Boom. He explains things in a really great way. Music is Win, YouTube channel. Check it out.
Awesome.
Anyway,
so going back, I
Going
just
back
want to
to-
go. So I
Yeah.
love that description you gave.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful description. What happens to us when we do not get our festering infections cleaned? When we do
Great
not release tension, when we do not get it out, what
Mm-hmm.
happens to us? I know I flip out on people sometimes.
yeah.
Like when I stuff things inside and I do not let them go,
Yeah.
little things can happen. And I don't even realize it till later. And I'm freaking out on somebody.
But it was just a little thing. But you're not freaking out because of the little thing. You're freaking out because that little thing on top of the million other little things that
Right.
are being stored,
Yes.
inside of your bod.
And that festering pressure has been penetrated
Yes.
in a small part. But because the pressure is so built up,
And then it just
it's better to get it out before that.
yeah.
Before that.
Yeah, and I would argue that, the most powerful art that we have experienced is coming from this place of almost trauma, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, one of my favorite pieces of music, Mozart's Requiem, which I recognize a lot of it was not written by Mozart, but all the main themes were written by him. You read the translated lyrics, and it's all coming from this place of he knows he's going to die. So, little backstory. He, according to rumor, he thought he was writing his own, funeral procession.
Mm-hmm.
So he thought that, I don't know why he thought this, but supposedly he thought that someone was paying him to write his own funeral procession. And so it's all about dying. It's all about acknowledging that there is a God that is very picky about behavior. And Mozart's been kind of a douche in his life. And he's like, oh, actually, I'm in the crosshairs. I'm going to get got by God, right? So he's acknowledging that when he dies, he will probably not go to heaven in his current state. And his current state being a fallen human, right?
Right.
Full of sin and nastiness. And so this 45-minute piece is dialoguing with the idea of, you know what, God, you should just kill all those nasty, horrible humans, but I am a nasty, horrible human. And it's really beautiful. And there's so much emotion there. And it comes across, and you understand, at least I do, understand where he was coming from, but I get it on an emotional level.
Right.
So even before you read the lyrics, you feel the emotion of it without necessarily having a super specific context, right? So in that instance, that was his outlet for that nihilistic, I'm going to die. What is up with that, right? And that's probably one of the, OG artistic expressions is, everybody's like, death. What is up with that?
Yeah.
And just dialoguing with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, deep. It's a little deep, but
I just want to give permission to artists and writers or people in general. Release your trauma. Release what you're going through.
Yeah.
You will release it regardless.
yeah, it's gonna come out.
You will end up in prison because of it, or broken relationships because of it, or something very negative if you don't learn how to do it in a positive way.
Yeah.
But we are going to, denial is one of those things we don't want to face what we're going through or how we really feel about something. And then you just crap on everyone, right? You just crap everywhere you go. That's what happens. We have to learn how to clean the festering wounds.
Yeah,
and it can be like you're saying, it's a beautiful thing when you use creativity to do it.
Yeah, and we have to find a way to do it regardless of whether or not it's related to art, i.e. therapy, right?
Yeah.
It's a legitimate way. I mean, because you got to do it. It's like you have to deal with it. You wouldn't just like get stabbed and then walk around like, oh well, I guess I have to just live with this knife just sticking out of me now. And you just kind of, can't bump into that or else I'll excite the wound. Like, no, you go to the hospital and you go, I have this knife sticking out of my side. I was stabbed and now I need to get unstabbed, please. And then just,
And we walk around like this sometimes and we're like, people are like, what's that? And they're like, oh,
it's nothing.
I got a pin jabbed in my
fine.
side. Like, everybody has that.
Right.
What are you kidding me? That's normal.
That's
I have another one in the back of my neck. And someone tells you, hey, that's not normal.
Yeah.
Like, to walk around with... But that's how we look at, a lot of times with our upbringings and trauma as we look at it. It was normal to us.
Yeah, it's my cross to bear. And it's like, no, like, deal with your crap. Like, don't be so proud that... Like, this got a little deep all of a sudden, but don't be so proud that you ignore trauma or you ignore your issues, right? Because like you're not gonna end up in a good spot. People don't put up with that forever, right? Because if you're just lashing out at everyone around you, which is often what happens, like you said, that's often what happens when you're just bottling that stuff up. It could be 20 years old plus, and you're still lashing out at people because you have no release for that thing that happened or that grouping of things. It's gotta come out somehow.
Yeah, and I think how much of a privilege and honor. It's really exciting to get to use music to do that.
Yeah.
Or film, video is another huge passion of mine as well. But maybe you don't know how to do that. Maybe you've never done that before. Maybe this is bringing stuff up and being like, oh my God, I'm doing what they're talking about.
Right.
Get a piece of paper and just start writing.
Yeah, just writing words. The first thing that comes to your mind.
Don't try to make a song or make a poem. Just puke on the paper.
Yeah.
And maybe at some point in time we can go more in deep to a good structure of how you can actually come up with something great doing this. You're not doing it to come up with something great, but learning how to do it in a structured format. This is something that I work with people on. Doing it specifically.
It's a good thing.
Not to create music or create art, essentially, but just to get the festering wound clean. And I might feel pretty good today, but something crappy might happen tomorrow, or I'm gonna go through life and I'm gonna get hurt. I'm going to have to process hard things, and that's not gonna stop.
Yeah, totally.
So why not sing a song?
Sing a song.
Dance.
Or dance about it.
Dance about it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's get it out.
Get it out. Yeah.
To quote, I think Olin Rogers. It's kind of random, but that one video he does where he's talking about the moth one, I think, where a moth like lands in his mouth. Have you seen this video?
I don't think so. No, but go for it.
Yeah, he's just he yawns, right? So he's like, so I just let it out, and then a moth lands in his mouth. Yeah, just go watch it. Olin Rogers. I don't remember.
Maybe we'll post
a soft landing. I think is what it's called. Soft landing.
We'll post it at the bottom of this, maybe.
Yeah.
Awesome.
But yeah, I feel like we've tapped into a neat little vein.
Yes.
We will return to said vein.
Yeah. We scratch the surface of what.
Yeah.
What is it? Well, part of what it is us to process trauma.
Yeah.
I think that's huge overall, kind of what we dove into today.
Yeah. And just to clarify, that sound was supposed to be me like scratching, but it didn't really sound like. So I'm just gonna I don't know. I just imagine it's a scratching sound. We're scratching the surface. Yeah, perfect. This is turning into an ASMR video.
Is that good?
I don't think so. But we could talk about that in a different podcast too. ASMR. What's up with that?
All right. Well, until next time,
Yeah.
signing off.